If you want to build killer habits to achieve all of your goals, you are in the right place. I read the entirety of Atomic Habits and I don't want to waste your time, so I'm going to get right into why systems and habits are so important. There's three main things that make systems and habits so important. The first is the power of a 1% change. Everyone talks about the importance of major improvements, like switching a habit you have or switching a lifestyle, but no one talks about the 1% gains you could be making every single day. Now, a 1% gain every single day for the next year will result in you being 37 times better by the end of the year. But the reverse can also happen if you just continuously get 1% worse. So you need to focus on the trajectory of your improvement, not necessarily how fast you're going. It's never going to be one big switch that changes everything for you. It's always going to be small improvements over time that are unseen. But eventually those will build up to one pivotal moment that'll be the switch for you. You can think of it like this. If you're in a freezer set at 28 degrees Fahrenheit and there's an ice cube on the table, it's just going to be sitting there. But as you slowly raise to 31 degrees, nothing's going to change. But once you hit 32, the ice cube melts. Now, achieving your goals is going to be the same exact way. There's going to be a lot of unseen buildup, and then overnight you're going to become successful. The second thing we have to cover is the power of systems. Now, most people have goals set in place of what exactly they want to accomplish, but systems are a lot different. Goals are what we want to achieve and what we dream of accomplishing. Systems are exactly how we're going to get there. So if you don't have any systems in place, you're just going after your goals frivolously. You don't know if you're taking the right steps to get there or if you're even making progress at all. But vice versa, if you don't have any goals set in place, the right system's going to take you nowhere because you don't know what to set a system in place for. Winners and losers both set the same exact goals, so what's really the difference between them? Well, a winner is going to stick to the same consistent actions that they can repeat every single day to get to their goals. A loser is just going to hope for the goal to show up in front of their face eventually. So your commitment to the process determines your progress. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And the third thing we need to cover is the 3 layers of habit change. Now, most people fall into this first layer. They are obsessed with getting to 1,000 subscribers, benching 315 pounds, or losing 50 pounds. But these are superficial reasons and they lack any meaning besides chasing a new number. This is called the outcome layer of habit change. If you just stay inside the outcome layer of habit change, you're never going to see any real change. But the next layer of people build processes around these habits they want to achieve. They're constantly making consistent improvements and striving towards their eventual goal. So layer 2 is processes. Using those repeatable set of plans and actions, they know exactly what steps to take to actually achieve them again. But truly successful people are not focused on outcome, they're not focused on processes. Successful people are focused on becoming the type of person who would achieve that goal. This is the identity layer of habit change, and these people focus on others who have accomplished their goals before them. They replicate what steps they took to get there, and then they become the kind of person who would achieve that goal. So if you make your identity align with the kind of person who achieves those goals, you're gonna become that kind of person. You're not just gonna achieve that kind of goal. And this is the true secret to making habit changes that last forever. Now you know why habits and systems are important, but I'm gonna show you the 4 laws to build better habits and get rid of bad ones. But first, we need to look at the habit change equation. Now this is a 4-step equation that explains all the phases every habit you try to form is gonna go through. Now, a first phase is a cue. This is your body telling you there's an opportunity to change your internal state, like smelling the food coming from the kitchen. Now, the second phase is called a craving, and this is when you get an actual desire to change your internal state, like walking into the kitchen to see what was cooked. The third stage is your response. This is when you take action according to your cue and your desire. So you pick up one of the cookies your grandma made for you and you eat it. The fourth phase is a reward. This is what happens after you complete the first 3 steps. So after you eat the cookie and you get the sugar and the fats and you get the dopamine rush from it. This cookie situation is just one example because this loop is constantly happening throughout our day. When you walk into a dark room and turn on the light, you went through the entire loop without even realizing it. The bigger the reward, the bigger the dopamine rush, and the more likely you are to do that same habit again. This is why a lot of people get into smoking, because it de-stresses you and gives you a lot of dopamine, and it makes you want another hit and another hit. Now you have a basic understanding of how the habit change equation works, but I'm going to show you how to use those 4 laws to manipulate this in your favor. Now, law number 1 is make it obvious. To build good habits, you need to make the cues constantly firing off throughout your day. You need to identify what currently cues your good and bad habits so you have an understanding of what works for you. Cues are just a reminder that there may be a reward present nearby. So you need to constantly find ways to put in reminders so you consistently do your good habits. And there's 2 main methods to do that. The first is implementation intention. So you're going to plan out specific times throughout your days to actually do your habits. You're going to get your calendar out and figure out, oh, I have 10 minutes after I cook dinner, and fill that with meditation. So you're planning your habits around your daily schedule and you're finding availability to fit them in. The main issue with this method is not everyone has a consistently predictable life. If something pushes in the way of it, you're going to forget about your meditation and never do it. The second method is a little bit better and it's the one I personally use. It's called habit stacking. So you know you brush your teeth 2 times a day, attach a set of 20 push-ups every time you brush your teeth. Attaching new habits to ones that are already there is a lot easier because once you do the other ones, it's going to remind you to do that one. But you can also invert the first law formula to make bad habits invisible. You could change your environment by making the things that are bad for you harder to access. So every time after you get up from the couch and you finish watching TV, unplug the TV and take the batteries out of the remote. Now, whenever you want to watch TV again, you have to actually think of something you actively want to watch, because you're going to have to choose to go plug the TV back in, go get the batteries for the remote, and it's going to be a long barrier until you can watch the TV. The barriers are going to make it so much harder to choose the bad habits because you actively have to do it. So with law number 1, you can make good habits obvious and bad habits invisible. With law number 2, you're going to make good habits attractive. So the habit change equation I shared with you earlier is known as a dopamine-driven feedback loop. This means your body does things that make it feel good, and when it makes it feel good, it wants to do it more and more and more. It's how your brain decides if you're making the correct choices throughout the day and what choices it wants to make later on. But most of the dopamine is not actually received from the reward. It's received from the anticipation. That's why children love waiting for Christmas gifts more than they really like opening them. So if you can build up the anticipation by making your habits more attractive, you're going to want to do them more and more and more. This is a method I use myself. It's called temptation bundling. It's pairing something you don't want to do with something you love doing. So personally, I do not like studying for exams. It's a super bad habit, but I just don't enjoy doing it. So whenever I study for an hour on my exam, I can spend 30 minutes playing a video game I really enjoy. By pairing those together, I now want to study on my exams because then I get to do something I enjoy after. While it may not be the most efficient use of my time, it's better than not studying at all, because studying is something I have to do. So you can make the new habits more attractive just by attaching something you already enjoy to it. But now let's look at the role of others on the attractiveness of building new habits. So if you want to have other people help you make bad habits unattractive, you need to hang out with the kind of people that would never do those things. So if some people find smoking repulsive, get yourself around them if you're trying to quit smoking. And if you want to get on a better diet, maybe start hanging out with people who go to the gym. If you do those things, they can help make those bad habits unattractive and make those good habits attractive. Because naturally, you're going to become more like the people you spend time with, and this will just make you a better person or a worse person, depending on how you choose to spend it. And now your new habits are attractive, but law number 3 says make it easy. All animals are wired to spend the littlest amount of energy that they possibly can for the biggest reward. Humans are no different. We want to take the road of the least resistance. So you can't really rely on discipline and willpower to stick to your new habits every single day. You need to make them as easy as possible to do. But before we can do that, you need to understand the difference between action and motion. Now, motion is actively planning or preparing for what you're gonna do. This is like planning out every single minute of your day tomorrow. Action is actually taking the steps to achieve your goals. This is actually following every single plan you put out the day before. A lot of people get caught in the endorphins and the novelty and the excitement of planning out their different things, and they get stuck in that motion phase rather than actually taking action. So if you want to start a YouTube channel just like I did, you can't spend all your time sitting there with the motion and planning out exactly how you're going to do it. You just have to take action and just go and do it. You have to understand you're going to get better as you do it. You're not going to get better if you don't. And that's because action leads to repetition, which strengthens neural activity. Now, inside your brain, you have neurons, and these connect to each other and they fire off in specific patterns to do certain things. I'm not going to act like I'm a neuroscientist, but I understand the very basics of it. It's why certain people get muscle memory after they've thrown a football a million times. But that same thing can also happen when you're doing the same habits day in and day out. Your brain's going to become so accustomed to just doing that thing, you're going to get better at it. So to make things easier, you need to prime your environment for your good habits. Now, this basically means setting up your environment and your room or wherever you are in the best potential way it could be to make sure it's pushing you towards good habits. Priming your environment just means putting things in a certain way to reduce friction to your good habits, like leaving out your gym clothes the night before or meal prepping for the next week so you can stick to your diet. By removing the friction, there becomes less active choice whenever you make a decision. It becomes automatic for you, and before you know it, you're at the gym already lifting. But you can also add friction if you're trying to get rid of bad habits, like putting screen time on your phone if you're trying to reduce usage, or not allowing yourself to play video games until all of your work is done. The friction will make it harder for you to achieve those bad habits, and you're going to be less likely to do them. The issue is sticking to those restrictions that you put on yourself. So you can get an accountability partner that's going to make sure you follow everything you said you were going to do. You could also do this with automation. So you could put someone else in place of managing your phone's passwords every week and make sure they're leaving the restrictions on regardless of what you say. This removes the need for self-discipline completely. Now, your good habits have become easier, your bad habits have become impossible, but now we can focus on law number 4, which is making it satisfying. Now, the dopamine feedback loop I talked about earlier is heavily based on how much dopamine is produced from the activities. The more dopamine that's produced, the more likely we're going to want to repeat those actions. So if you want to build killer habits, you need to make sure you are constantly giving yourself little hits of dopamine throughout the entire process. There's one mindset you need to carry into building these new habits. What is rewarded is repeated. What is punished is avoided. So if you reward yourself for your good habits and punish yourself for your bad ones, you're going to follow along suit. But why do we value dopamine so much? Well, our ancestors lived in what is known as an instant return environment. So as soon as they did an action that was good for them, they immediately got the dopamine and the reward. If they went and hunted and killed an animal, they immediately got the food for it that day. But we live in a delayed return environment. So most of the work we put in today, we're not going to see any returns for a very long time. So those things never feel good in the moment, but bad things always do because we get that instant hit of dopamine. Companies prey on this by giving you foods that are high in fats and sugars. They're not good for you, but they make you feel good in the moment. And a lot of people use them as a sort of coping mechanism to get quick hits of dopamine. So choosing good habits is not actually the normal thing to do. It's not what your brain wants to do. It wants to choose the bad things. But you can override that by making good habits satisfying through very small increments of acknowledgement. You can do this through visual measurements like habit trackers, which just track how many days you accomplish your habit in a row. Once you see that long streak build up, there's going to be a lot of dopamine because you're proud of yourself and you're slowly becoming the kind of person who works out or the kind of person who studies. And it's going to continue to motivate you because you don't want to break the chain. You want to keep that new identity that you created for yourself. But you can also put small rewards in place. Like if your goal is to study every single day throughout the week, maybe when you hit Sunday, you get a little bowl of ice cream or you get whatever you want. The more satisfaction, the more likely you are to continue the dopamine feedback loop. This will continue pushing you towards killer habits to achieve all of your goals. Maybe your new habit will be about fitness. Maybe your new habit will be about creativity. If you're that second one, I have a video covering every single thing you need to know to become more creative.